screen starts glowing and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a brand new year on The Goods, a film podcast. How's your 2025 kicking off, Dan?
I gotta be honest, Brian, I've been really burnt out so far. We're about a week into the year when we're recording this. So I had this thing at work where this is like going to be the epitome of first world problems. So just like prepare yourself for like the world's smallest violin here. But I can only carry over 2 weeks of leave at my job, but each year they give me more and more leave. So I have to like burn through leave. And normally I manage this just fine. We go on a trip here and there, a sick day. I'll do something with the kids for a day. Sure, no problem. This year I had a couple of days to burn at the end of the year. And it was use it or lose it, you know? So I was like, well, I'll use it. So I took off a couple more days during the holiday season than I normally do. I essentially lined up with what my daughters did, which was 2 full weeks. And then I took another extra day or two off after that because I had a death in the family, and we had some family events going on because of that. And so like the net result was that I was out of office for like 2 weeks. And then even the time I was in there, it was like very scattered. And so now I just feel like I have a million things falling on me. But you know what? I don't think that I'm the only person who signs on early January to their work and is like, oh, dang it. Back to the grind, I guess, you know?
Yeah, I was literally just looking at a meme of Joe Pesci getting walked into the room where he thinks he's going to get made in Goodfellas, and it says, I'm feeling pretty confident about going back to work today.
Yeah, that's me pretty much. Except I never really felt confident, but yeah. I'm also in the middle of this big work project that kind of got to always be on, you know? Not always be on, but there's... I wanted to not fall too far behind. Mm-hmm. Anyways.
Can't be editing podcasts on the clock.
Maybe less than normal. But how about you, Brian? How's 2025 treating the Terrell household and the Brian wing of the Terrell household specifically?
Oh, you know, it's not too different from normal, but pretty soon it'll be time for a birthday episode here on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Probably week after next, it'll be that time. I'm going to be 35, so between now and then, I got to do some mental preparation.
35. Do you think, well, I'll be curious to hear, does that feel special since it's a 5?
It just feels old.
Someone I saw tweeted, or not tweeted, whatever thing I was on. I can't remember if it was Facebook or Reddit or whatever. And it was moments in The Simpsons that make you feel old. And I think it's like a scene one time Marge tells Homer that he's 39 for like him dreaming about being young. I don't remember exactly the context, but meant to make you feel old if you're 39. And I'm not quite 39. I got a couple more years to that, but we're getting up there, Brian.
Yeah. I binged The Simpsons during COVID, like the first 31 seasons. And actually, he's even younger than that in the early seasons. Like, he's the only one, I think, who his age has actually gone up.
Interesting.
But early on, like, first couple seasons, they might have actually said 35. And then they bumped it forward a couple years.
So I find it very confusing trying to think about what are the ages of characters in sitcoms. Because something about sitcoms in particular, where it's just like, you're almost in like a time loop, you know? It's just like, they're sort of living a half real life. Trying to think about their ages, just, it doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't feel like Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother was 23 at the start of that show, or like 24, or whatever he's supposed to be. He's just like generically young fella. It's like, I can't put a specific number on it.
Yeah, we talked about in our discussion of episodes in our Christmas Carol episode this year about that in sitcoms, the status quo can't ever really change too much.
Mm-hmm.
But we know from real life that at least one aspect of the status quo that changes day to day is our age. And in TV shows, not always so apparent.
Right.
More so if it's like a family that has kids and it's not a cartoon. Like if it's Roseanne, like if it's Tim the Toolman on Home Improvement. Like you can see families grow up there. Or like Opie on Andy Griffith.
Yeah. Modern Family. I remember that. That Tim the Toolman reference, was that an attempt to get us back on track, Brian?
Course correct. Realign our trajectory. We got to calibrate our spaceship. Maybe so, because we do have a line item on our agenda today, and that's to talk about a movie, like we usually do. This is episode 195, and the movie that I wanted to talk about is called Galaxy Quest from 1999. What did you know about this one, Dan?
So I've told you repeatedly over the past few years that I've never seen this movie. And then I turned it on. I was like, yeah, I've never seen this movie. And then it got to about the halfway mark, and I was like, oh, wait, I've seen half this movie. So I think I had sort of seen in like the way that it's on in your house when you're kind of doing something else, the second half of this movie before. And a lot of stuff, I didn't really get it when I saw it when I was a kid. And it made a lot more sense because like I didn't even realize the whole pitch of the thing. If you just hop in the middle, it's a lot less obvious. But I kind of knew just that it was well regarded as a sci-fi comedy, which is a tough genre to nail.
Yes. So I saw this for the first time in 8th grade. On the last day of 8th grade, our civics teacher put this on in class.
Everything happened when you were in 8th grade, Brian.
Good memory. It's so true, which would have been around about 2003. So I saw like the first 3/4 in this like 90-minute class period. And then I had to track it down to see how it ended. Didn't get like the last 10 minutes of the movie, 15 minutes. And then I found a VHS of it at a gas station in a bargain bin.
Wow.
VHS is kind of on the way out in 2004, 2005. And so it's like 99 cents. It's like, finally, I can finish the movie. And I really liked it. This is one that I really like. It didn't quite have enough birthday theming to be the official pick. But you may remember I included it on my 100 favorite films discussion a little over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to dive today a little bit into why I like it. But you mentioned you didn't quite get it, and definitely jumping in halfway. Like, this is a movie that you probably don't want to be doing that. Better to start from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But a big part of it is that it is a parody, as the title might suggest, of Star Trek. Galaxy Quest, Star Trek.
Sure.
And are you familiar with Star Trek, Dan? How much Star Trek have you watched?
I would call it a gap in my pop culture knowledge. Love Star Wars, love Blade Runner. Seen a couple episodes scattered just in various scenarios on at friends' houses. I think I had like either a history or English teacher show us one, not from the original, but it might have been The Next Generation, where to teach some concept about language and like how Star Trek showed it or something. I don't know. I've seen like little bits here and there, but certainly not enough to like really know too much about it. And now I'm remembering you have a funny anecdote about seeing Star Trek in theaters. It's like, what was it that Ben said?
Right. So it's a little bit of a gap for me. I'm on sort of a borderline. Like, I've never really sat down and followed a Star Trek show. I've seen a few episodes of original series, a few episodes of Next Generation. a couple things here and there. And in 2009, I went with my friends to see the J.J. Abrams reboot Star Trek movie that came out. And they were less familiar with it than I was, my friends. And, of course, in this movie, it was like a time warp. They cast young actors to play the characters from the original series. And so we were watching, and about halfway through the movie, and these are characters like Kirk and Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov. And about halfway through, Ben, my friend, starts like poking me with his elbow. He's like, "Hey, the bald guy. The bald guy. Who's him in this?" And I was like, I didn't understand what he was asking for. And I was thinking, like, what? Who's him in this? The bald guy. And then towards the end, I realized, oh, he's thinking about Jean-Luc Picard as portrayed by Patrick Stewart in The Next Generation.
Who's him in this, Brian?
I said, he's not in this one, Ben. That's the other one. Which I think The Next Generation is the incarnation of Star Trek that Galaxy Quest owes the most to. Mm-hmm. Like, it very much looks like Next Generation.
And I will say, I said I hadn't seen any Star Trek movies, but I did see that one. I think it's like 2009 or something. But I almost feel like that doesn't count, at least by reputation for Star Trek heads I know. It's like, oh, it's not a real Star Trek movie. But maybe it is. I don't know. Yeah,
well, my, again, like, kind of outside observer opinion, and what my understanding of it is that, like, all the other Star Trek stuff had really been invested in having a canon, like one shared canon, and it all kind of works together. And then the J.J. Abrams movie, he's like, well, I want to start over. I want this to be new. Like, same characters, but it doesn't have to fit in with all that other stuff. Which is kind of like a little blasphemous.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
When everything else had been made to fit together. And it involves Spock, the Spock that we know, Leonard Nimoy, going back in time and changing something. And so then it's like defensible because, no, this is like Universe B. This is like a branch that Spock caused where the J.J. Abrams movies happen. So I guess accept that or not, whatever you choose to do.
Right. And I don't have an opinion on the matter.
It's all just something that some guy made up.
That's my usual Lord of the Rings take. You, me, and Will, I don't know what it is. You've been sending a bunch of Lord of the Rings memes to me and my brother Will, who obviously has appeared on the pod many times at this point. And I'm looking forward to our Lord of the Rings discussion at some point, our Tolkien-a-thon.
Yeah, sorry about that. Christmas is when I rewatch Lord of the Rings now. And, like, I like to meme. I like to meme on my feed, and now my whole feed is Lord of the Rings memes.
Devastating. I think even if you, like, expand a post, like, you don't even like it, you just see what the comments are, Facebook ingests that, and it's like, oh, that's what you want to know about. So...
And actually, I've encountered some things where I think it tracks your eyes, and if you looked at it but didn't click it, it'll still show you more of that.
I mean, I absolutely believe it. I don't know if you use the app. Like, the app, I would completely believe it, that if you are, like, hesitating on something and it tracks the things that you are spending time on your screen, you know?
Right.
Yeah. But I don't even know if I should admit this on air, but I must have, like, clicked on the comments. I'm sure I didn't like, because I almost never like, and I don't even spend that much time on Facebook. But Facebook is just unusable now. It's so bad. It, like... so many fewer of my friends actually use it anymore, and like it constantly feeds me trash pages of like lazy content. But the ones that it's gotten me on are the attractive actresses feed. So like, oh, here's Jenna Ortega. Oh, here's Sydney Sweeney. Oh, just like over and over again. I'm not engaging with these. Like, I guess it knows what's in my brain, but like I haven't been clicking on these, so I don't know why it thinks I want to look at these. I mean, maybe it knows I'm watching a lot of movies, and I'm a 30-something straight male, but I don't know.
Right. I've heard horror stories about if your significant other asks to scroll your FYP, your For You page that's cooked up by your algorithms. That's the test, supposedly. But Star Trek. What I like about Galaxy Quest is, like, if you know the broad strokes, like if you know that there's a big fandom dedicated to Star Trek, if you've ever heard of like a red shirt, you're going to see returns. You're going to enjoy this, or at least have the potential to enjoy this parody. You don't have to be deep into the nitty-gritty to get it. This movie has a crazy cast.
Yeah, I kept being like, whoa.
There's just a ton of people. Kind of the central triad is Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver and Alan Rickman. And the movie follows this group of actors who were the stars of a science fiction show in the 80s called Galaxy Quest. And now it's like 18 years later, it's 1999, and they eke out a living by traveling from convention to convention and making appearances.
And I was actually thinking about this. Like, I feel like cons are a lot bigger than they were in, what is this, 1999? Is that right?
Right.
So this almost felt kind of prescient to me. It's like in some ways it's, well, we'll get to it, but it felt like it was almost a parody of fan culture to some extent.
Definitely. And you're right that Star Trek kind of put conventions on the map. They kind of started up the whole convention machine. This community of Star Trek fans that are commonly known as Trekkies. I've heard some consider that pejorative and prefer the term Trekkers.
Okay.
In this movie, it calls them Questarians, which you only hear that one time. That's a little silly, but they do have a term for them, a demonym.
Questarians.
Yeah, it opens at a convention, and the cast is there. Like, the very first thing is a clip from the show, and then smash cut to the stars at a convention table signing autographs. Or they're like about to go out because the captain, the star of the show, is late. He hasn't showed up yet. And the other actors are kind of grousing that this is a routine occurrence that he is not showing up on time. That he doesn't really like respect their time. And then when he does show up, he's like a blowhard. And he knows that the people are there to see him because he's the captain. And he doesn't give the others their moment in the sun. And also is kind of like divorced from the reality of how famous they are.
Right.
Which is not super famous.
I really like this opening segment. I was really impressed with the efficiency of how much you get to know each character. It's good writing. It made me... Probably just because it's Tim Allen, but I was thinking of Toy Story and the way that you only need to like hear a few lines from each character and you're like, oh, I get this character now. I understand.
Definitely. I love this script. Very tight script. And there's a lot of characters and there's like kind of a lot of ideas to cover. But you're right. Everybody kind of has their little aspect of the Star Trek phenomenon that they're commenting on. And it's also meta. That a big part of what makes this movie work and makes it funny is that it's the absurdity of actors having to do what they do on TV. Assume the duties that they pretend to be skilled at. Same thing with Tropic Thunder, for one. The captain is played by Tim Allen. And so everybody's got two names also because they're actors who are playing characters.
Kind of convoluted.
So Tim Allen is Jason Nesmith, who played on the TV show Commander Peter Quincy Taggart. Sigourney Weaver I'm going to kind of like introduce them. There's like a dedicated block in my notes of, okay, talk about who everybody is, because it's, as you said, convoluted. But yeah, before Taggart shows up, Tim Allen, everybody is like talking behind the scenes, behind his back, about how they're kind of irked with him. And so the crew is made up of Sigourney Weaver, who plays the character was Tawny Madison. And so everybody's also kind of got Star Trek parallels. So for Tim Allen, probably the closest one is William Shatner.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of Shatner.
But also I think it owes a lot to Buzz Lightyear.
Ah.
The idea that, like, you don't... He's kind of deluded, doesn't know if he's really a spaceman. He's kind of caught up in that delusion of grandeur.
I'm smelling what you're stepping in here.
And then Sigourney Weaver, of course, also famous for playing a space heroine.
Yeah, this was funny to me because the thing about her... I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder here talking about her.
No, this is good. I think, I mean, after we've heard what's on your FYP, I think you're qualified to talk about this.
This was funny for me because, like, in Alien, she's just a badass, you know? She's like, she gets stuff done. She's Hermione Granger. And I think maybe it's her. I can't remember if it was that character or a different one, but, like, might have initially been written as a male character or, like, a gender-neutral character. And they're like, oh, we're going to cast her. Great. But here she's like reduced to being just like a very secondary piece where it seems like her job is to like take what someone else said and say it to somebody else. It's like a very kind of unglamorous, low responsibility role.
Right. And on top of that, she's very sexed up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Much more than in Alien. Yeah. She's like blonde and they've coiffed out her hair. What's the word? Coiffed out her hair a little bit. And
yeah.
And later in the film, she gets to have a tear at the front of her shirt so you can see her cleavage.
Right. And as you said, her job is to repeat what the computer says. But she also is the only one who can issue orders to the computer. So that's something. That's a little more consequential. I think her closest Trek parallel is Deanna Troi from The Next Generation. Marina Sirtis, who kind of her gimmick was that she was a mind reader. Or it wasn't quite a mind reader. I think she was an empath, like a feeling reader. And so she would just say things that would be pretty evident to anyone who has empathy, which is most of us. And kind of the meme is that she'd be like, Captain, he's hiding something. And it's like, yeah, of course. aren't we all? But also maybe some like Uhura, because Uhura was the linguist and like the communications officer.
Mm-hmm. That's the one that I was thinking of, yeah.
Alan Rickman is here as kind of the perpetual second banana. His character name is Dr. Lazarus. And he's always bemoaning the fact that he's like a trained Shakespearean actor, a British actor, and that he just feels typecast, only known for this one role. He hates always being in Tim Allen's shadow. And what he really, really hates is always having to say his catchphrase, which is, by Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged.
It's a really stupid catchphrase. By Grabthar's hammer or something dumb like that. It's like the kind of thing that, yeah, you would read in like a sci-fi novel written by a 16-year-old or something like that. And then he presumably had to repeat it every episode. But the like adding insult to all of it is he has this prosthetic alien head hair thing that he always has to wear whenever he's at a convention or something like that. I don't think we ever see him without it the whole movie.
No, just that as it goes, it starts to break down. Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver's shirts start breaking down, and Alan Rickman's head thing starts falling apart. But he is mostly Spock. He's known as being this smart alien guy. Also, I think a little Worf, because they kind of refer to his people as being like warriors. They have special warrior skills.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's got the head thing. So he's a little bit Klingon, a little bit Vulcan.
He also looked like an alien in Mass Effect, but I don't remember which one it's called.
And it's a big cast. So this section's going to take a little while. They're like the big three, but everybody gets some time to shine. There's a guy named Daryl Mitchell who plays the character Laredo, who is an African-American character. He was the pilot of the ship, and he was also a child. Like, he was flying the spaceship as a kid. And so he's a combination of Geordie LaForge, LeVar Burton, who was the pilot in TNG, and then I think he became the engineer. But also with Wesley Crusher, the, what was his name? He makes cameos on things like The Big Bang Theory. Will Wheaton played Wesley Crusher, who was the annoying, like, precocious child crew member on The Next Generation.
I didn't know this actor, I don't think. I haven't looked up to see if I've seen him in anything else, but he was well cast, even if he's not a big name, because he's so good at, like, reaction faces. Like, big, bulging eyes, like, oh my god, what's happening right now? And he does that, like, 3 times, and there's one particular one that really slayed me. I was laughing.
Right. This film makes a lot of comic hay of being in awkward situations, unexpected situations, and just the comic potential of that. But the one who never seems phased is the always unflappable Tony Shalhoub, who basically plays the Scotty character. He, on the show, works they call it the digital conveyor, but he's beaming people up and down. That's his job. And the actor that he's playing, who they call Fred, he is like, I don't know if he's supposed to be a stoner, but he's just always chill. Like, nothing that happens surprises him.
Yeah, I didn't quite know what stereotype they were going for with this one, but I like Tony Shalhoub. And not the only time I got some Spy Kids energy from this one, Brian. Sharing an actor with Spy Kids. But there is some stuff that had me thinking of, like, the Robert Rodriguez digital filmmaking aesthetic here.
I can see that. I want to hear more about that.
Okay.
And then rounding out this crew, at least at the convention, the guy who is like emceeing and introducing everybody turns out to have made a 1-episode appearance on the show as crewman number 6. And the character's name is Guy, so kind of dually emphasizing that he is expendable.
He's a nobody.
And he was the red shirt. His role on the show was to die so that we knew it was serious. It's like the monster showed up and killed this low-ranking crew member, which happened all the time at least on Star Trek, the original series. I think it continued after that, but I find it interesting that, so in the original series, the red uniforms are the lowest rank. Those are like the privates. And Captain Kirk wears a gold uniform. But I believe that the fans figured out early on that, the red shirts, you don't have to care about the red shirts. They're the ones who are always going to die. They don't matter. So then when the Next Generation rolled around and a century had passed in that universe, now the captains wear red. Captain Picard has a red shirt. So I think they were kind of trying to turn that paradigm on its head. I don't know, though. I would imagine that still there are extras who are dying off.
But I don't know. Did you say the name of the actor? I can't remember.
Oh, his name is Sam Rockwell.
So Sam Rockwell has like skyrocketed up my list of favorite actors. He's terrific in absolutely everything that he's in. And he's got like this ability to be like somewhere in the everyman slimeball spectrum, like kind of a, not like what am I trying to say? He's got like a sort of almost dirtbag energy to him sometimes, but he can also be like extremely charismatic and like kind of heroic too. And so he's just very malleable for whatever role you put him in. Like he was in that panned movie from this year, which I actually thought was kind of okay, which was Argyle. And he was the best part of it. And he's just very funny too. Like everything that he's in, he's funny. I don't know. I feel like he's a movie improver in whatever he's in. And the bit where he's like reckoning with what his role is, like, you know, I'm going to die. That's my job in this thing. I was laughing so hard. He's so good at it.
Yeah, you're right.
Now that you're kind of going through it, I'm thinking of Mars Attacks too, Brian, where it's just like, oh, another guy. Cause you still haven't even hit on all the names in this.
That's right. It just keeps going. And as you said, it's people who stuck around. Some were already big names, but some would just get bigger after this. Like Rainn Wilson shows up pretty soon, but he's like the 15th most prominent character. He's like pretty low on the totem pole. At this convention, the captain, Tim Allen, is really sucking up the attention and like just loving interacting with the fans, basking. But then he like goes to the restroom and he hears people in the next stall bad-mouthing him. Like, oh, these actors, they think they're really hot shit, but they're nothing. They're has-beens, they're wash-ups. And aren't they such losers to think that this is still cool? But it's like, dude, if you're here, you bought a ticket to the Star Trek convention. Like, who the heck are you?
Yeah, you're the one who are paying them money to see them talk up there, dude. Something like that, yeah.
But it takes some of the wind out of Tim Allen's sails.
It's a good reality check.
Then when this group of fans comes up and is like asking him technical questions about the ship, he gets irate and he shuts them down.
By the way, did you recognize this face, Brian?
Yes, the leader of this little cadre of fans is Justin Long, who I know he really had his breakout with the Mac versus PC commercials in like the 2000s. The I'm a Mac, and he's like a cool kid who listens to music. And then the I'm a PC is like a dorky businessman with a briefcase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the guy who wrote them is actually the guy who plays the PC. That I heard that one time. That could be something that I either misunderstood or was made up, but that's what I heard.
That's interesting. Self-effacing.
Those were really influential commercials. Like they totally and successfully reshaped Apple's image. And that was right around the time of the iPod and stuff. But he's in a lot of stuff, and I like him. He's divisive. A lot of people don't like him, but I enjoy him. He was in, I think, the 4th and also maybe the 5th Die Hard. Which I'm fond of the 4th Die Hard. It's probably my second favorite one. It's barely even a Die Hard movie. It's just a generic action movie, but it's the good kind. And he was very funny in the only funny part I would say of Barbarian, the horror with just a tinge of comedy from 2022. So yeah, you see him and stuff.
Yeah, I think just about everybody who's here is well cast and gets some funny stuff to do. Other movies like that where there's just a ton of people and yet they all kind of get gags. I think of Walk Hard because like a ton of people show up in that movie. But this one's a little more character driven, a little more narratively satisfying. But Tim Allen, he has this blow up at Justin Long and then he storms off. But like as he's heading out, he runs into this other group of people who are all in costume. They're like in these silver jumpsuits and they have slicked back hair and they act strangely. And they are asking if he'll like come with them and help them. And he kind of blows them off, but they like offer him money or something, or he thinks they're offering him money. He's like kind of interested, but still like is in a huff, and heads back to his bungalow, his house in the LA hills, like his BoJack Horseman house. And he proceeds to get wasted. And so then the next morning, he's like in a hungover stupor when these people come back to collect him. And he thinks that they are like shooting a fan film or something, or a commercial, something that they want him to make a guest appearance in. And they bring him aboard a limo, and he like passes out, falls asleep, and we see that the limo takes off into space. And the next thing, he's aboard a spaceship. But it like takes him a while to realize it. So these people in the silver jumpsuits, they introduce themselves as Thermians, and they have kind of this sing-song voice. The lead actor among the Thermians is a guy named Enrico Colantoni, and the leader character is named Mathazar.
Do you know Colantoni from anything else, Brian?
I don't, but from the behind-the-scenes DVD features on this movie, apparently he just came into his audition doing all these things, and the filmmakers were like, that's hilarious. You're going to teach all the other Thermians how to act the way that you're acting.
So he's the dad in Veronica Mars, which is not really a comedy series. It's like a teen mystery drama.
With Kristen Bell, right?
Yeah, that was one of her breakouts. And he's really, really good in that. But I think he's known for being like a very funny guy. Even though he kind of carries himself, if you see him in other stuff, he kind of like looks like he should be in a Martin Scorsese film or something like that. Like he just kind of looks like a good fella.
Yeah. I mean, he sounds very Italian. I'm going to guess from Enrico Colantoni. But he's got like that hairline that it just kind of seems like he's a gangster.
Right. In this one, yeah. He kind of has a more shaved head. He kind of looks a little bit like Joe Pesci. Well, that's not right. Well, anyways. And then he was also in the Party Down pilot, because the Party Down series was made by the people who made Veronica Mars. And he's very funny in the Party Down pilot.
But his persona as Mathazar is like, Commander Taggart, you are our last hope. And also, whenever the Thermians walk anywhere, this was talked about in the behind the scenes. When you walk, you probably swing your arms opposite to your legs. So if your left leg goes forward, your right arm comes forward. And if your right leg goes forward, your left arm comes forward. But the Thermians match. They have their left arm move when their left leg moves, and their right arm move when their right leg moves. And so the effect is they look like marionettes or something. It's very strange. And so they say that they've brought Commander Taggart onto their ship to help defeat this alien warlord named Saris. And they like click the view screen and Saris pops up, and he's like Dagda in Max Magician. He's got the crazy evil monster makeup. It's like, oh my god, we haven't seen anything like this yet. And Tim Allen is even like, wow, you guys really have an effects budget. And but he's not fully locked in yet. He still thinks this is a B-movie gig of some kind. He just says, yeah, shoot him. Just fire the cannons and, give me my check in the mail. And he starts walking away. And Thermians say, well, what if this doesn't work? Saris has a very powerful ship. And basically the agreement is if Ceres isn't dead from this salvo, like, come get me again. Come back to Earth and I'll help you out again. But the Thermians say, well, okay. And they put Tim Allen in this, like, escape pod bay on the ship, and they encase him in some kind of bubble and fire him out of the port on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like, blasts super speed through space back to the Earth. And this probably the most cartoony digital effect. But it's what makes Tim Allen realize that, wait a minute, this is real. They were really aliens. I was really on a spaceship.
He comes to terms with it pretty well.
Because they had a need for him. They saw him as his character. They saw him as important. And he is really ready to jump into that role. At least into that level of prestige. And so he runs and tracks down the other actors who are at, like, the opening of a car dealership or something.
Some really demeaning appearance.
They're gonna cut a ribbon. And I love Alan Rickman here. He says, by Grabthar's hammer, what a savings.
His line read is so good with this. He just couldn't be more disdainful. He couldn't resent his life more in this moment.
But Tim Allen comes running up, and they're like, dude, you're clearly, like, hungover. You're late again. What do you want? And he says, come with me to space. There's real aliens. They have a spaceship. Come with me. And so they think this is nuts, but then Tony Shalhoub says, it's an acting gig. And all the actors are like, oh yeah. Starving actors. They would jump at a gig. And so they all run after Tim Allen. Yes, take us with you. And then the next thing is they're all on the ship. There's kind of a funny beat where when most of the actors get there onto the ship and the Thermians approach them, they don't have their human cloaking generators on. And so they're like horrifying octopus aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And the other actors are terrified. But they get the, like, cloakers working just before Tim Allen comes back into the room. And he's like, what is it, guys? What's the matter? Another flexing of the effect that we have these octopus creatures. I liked the practical makeup when we got to see it.
Yeah, I think some of it... So, for context, is it 1999 when Star Wars Episode 1 came out?
Yes.
So, I think it doesn't look quite as good as Star Wars Episode 1, which, why would you expect it? I mean, that stuff was cutting edge, but I think it looks pretty solid. There are definitely times when you can tell that it's like, it's maybe a step up from the Mars attacks, which, like, was very leaning into the sort of uncanny alien design. There's definitely some CG that kind of pulled me out of it a little bit, like, still ramping up on, like, getting the CGI to integrate well with the live action. But a lot of it looks really good. And yeah, when they do practical stuff, it looks excellent.
At least some of the actors, right away, once they realize this is real, are like, we should tell the aliens that we are not a spaceship crew. We're not really the characters that we portray. Because what we find out is that these Thermians have intercepted the radio broadcasts, the television broadcasts coming from Earth. They've picked them up, and they've built their whole society around Galaxy Quest. to the point of actually building the Protector, which is their Enterprise ship. And, like, down to the most minute details. If it was in an episode, it's incorporated into this ship that they've built. And somehow everything works. Somehow this is all sound technology.
That was the thing that was blowing my mind. Yeah, it's like there's a beryllium sphere that they use as fuel, and like it's just sci-fi gibberish that you would make up in the show. But like it turns out, oh yes, getting a beryllium sphere actually works as fuel. And I was saying,
But I mean, there's some cases where fiction inspires technological developments, like jetpacks in Tom Swift. Then people are like, well, we want jetpacks. They're cool. But, you know, that at least can spread by word of mouth. Hard to explain how a completely separate alien civilization would just happen to develop the exact same technology.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like it. I like that whatever has to happen has happened so that these actors can suddenly walk into having to fulfill their roles in reality.
And I also like that it feels like it's escalating the sort of parody of fan culture, of people taking stuff just too seriously. And we kind of get a couple dimensions on that as the movie builds. But it's like kind of taking this concept of, man, people just get way too into dork shit and like raising it to a hyper literal level. That's very amusing.
Yeah, life or death. And the Thermians, like at one point in the middle of the movie, the actors say, well, don't you have any theater or fiction on your planet? And the Thermians don't. So they interpret anything that they see coming from Earth as a historical documentary. And somebody, Sigourney Weaver, maybe, says, well, you don't think Gilligan's Island is real, do you? And all the aliens get this tragic look on their faces and they say, those poor people. Which is probably among, like, my top 3 biggest laughs in this movie.
I was thinking of you on that one, Brian. I was like, oh, Brian likes this joke.
I crack up every time. That was when I knew, when we just saw the first however much of it in class. I was like, I gotta track this down and know how it ends. But Nesmith, the captain, Tim Allen, gradually encourages his crew members to kind of adopt their roles to help in this battle that is looming. This encounter with Saris. Among the alien crew, there's a few actors who get some significant screen time. Actually, Rainn Wilson does not get too much screen time. He's pretty secondary, but like anytime you see him, it's like, wait a minute, that's Dwight from The Office.
It's Dwight, yeah. I didn't even really notice him after the beginning, but at the beginning I was like, oh my god, it's Dwight.
But like one of them is named Quellic, and Quellic is always following Alan Rickman around. He's specifically a Dr. Lazarus fanboy. He's like, I've crafted my life around your teachings, Dr. Lazarus. And at first, you know, Alan Rickman is very irritated because what does Quellic want to hear but by Grabthar's hammer? Also, there's a female Thermian named Laliari, who she gets a couple gags. First off, her translator doesn't work, and so she's still speaking the octopus language. But eventually she forms a relationship with Tony Shalhoub, and there's comedy from it being kind of off-putting that she's this octopus alien and they're macking on each other.
For some reason, this character is what I most remembered from when I saw it when I was like 12 or whatever.
And Mathazar is fun because he's always so earnest. He's just, now that we know these aliens have this like naivete baked into their culture, It breaks your heart whenever he's deceived. He has a wholesomeness.
I know, it's contagious.
Because when the actors are like trying at least a little to get him to understand what theater is, what fiction is, he's like, oh yes, often Ceres will say one thing and do another. Deception, lies. This is a concept we have recently become aware of at some great cost. And it's like whenever he'll go on one of these monologues, it's like your heart is breaking. Don't hurt Mathazar.
Brian's a Mathazar fan.
One of the funny bits, Tommy, who played the character Laredo, has to fly the ship out of like a hangar. And it's very drawn out because, again, he wasn't really flying a ship on a TV show. He was just pretending to fly a ship. And so now he's actually got to drive this huge piece of technology. And it's very stilted. And he starts like grinding against one side of the garage, the space garage.
This was very funny to me because this is the one where he gets the big bug eye, like, uh-oh, what am I doing? That really made me laugh.
Yeah. Just everything is executed well in terms of timing and editing, because they basically have christened the ship. The ship's gonna launch, and so the captain says, well, basically take her to sea, Mr. Murdoch. And he's got these responsibilities, Tim Allen, of starting off the mission. And Laredo makes some aside of, I'm glad I'm not the commander. And he's like, well, you got to fly the ship now. They based it on watching you. So you're the one who's responsible right now. This is your moment. The pressure's on you. So they are shunted off of the battle with Ceres plotline for a little while because, like, they escape through a minefield, but the ship also gets damaged. They've got to go get a new beryllium sphere, as you said. And basically all of this is just an excuse for us to see some character growth happening. Like, we need some time for things to happen, as they say in Troll 2.
Wise storytelling advice.
Couldn't just be battles all the time. You need to kind of have some time for things to happen.
Right, so it's like a few episodic little adventures in here where they need to, like, become their role in order for the mission to succeed. Step away from the way that they were all kind of ironically almost detached from their role and accept the positive traits. Embrace them and use those to kind of solve these problems.
Right. And also a common structure of a Star Trek episode is that they will do what's called an away mission, which is when some little shuttlecraft goes down to a planet and it takes the star actors on the shuttle and they have to do something down on the ground. Like, that's very common. You see that all the time in Star Trek. And so they go to this planet where, yeah, this is where the effects show their age, because there are these little blue aliens who run the space mine, who are basically like the Crazy Frog or the alien in Blue Dabba D.
Yeah, this was a scene that felt kind of Spy Kidsy to me. It reminded me of Spy Kids 2 when they battle a monster, and it's kind of like CGI knockoff Harryhausen type thing. Although these are little guys, not big guys.
But they put Tim Allen into an arena. Like, the rest of the crew gets away, escapes on the shuttlecraft, but Tim Allen is stuck down on the planet. And the little blue guys put him in an arena with a monster. And at first, it's a medium-sized monster. It's like a pig hog monster alien. But then a little later, there's a bigger monster.
One of my favorite gags of the movie came with the way that he escapes the first monster, the smaller monster, is they're trying to figure out how the beam me up, Scotty technology works. They're like, oh, I think it works. We haven't really tested it. We designed it for humans. They're like, okay, well, let's just see if it works. Let's see if we can beam up this little pig monster guy. And so they beam him up, and he turns inside out. And Tim Allen's like, he's like kind of running away. Did it work? Did it work? He's like, well, sort of, but he's inside out. And then it like pops and gushy stuff goes everywhere, like viscera. And by the way, the viscera stays on a couple of the characters for like 15 minutes after that. But they're like, well, it turned him inside out and he exploded. And just the delivery of these lines and the timing of it is all very good.
And he exploded. Yes. But yeah, they're having this like what do they call them? I think they call them tricorders on Star Trek. The little cell phone things that they have that they can talk between the planet's surface and the spaceship. And they're having this pep talk over the tricorder where Tim Allen says, "No, Fred," who's there, Scotty, Tony Shalhoub, you gotta believe in yourself. You gotta find your confidence. You gotta embrace your role so that you'll know how to beam me up without turning me inside out and exploding me. And wouldn't you know it, that in the nick of time, it does work. It works right, and he's able to get beamed up and away. But eventually, they repair the ship, and they confront Saris again, this warlord. And at one point, the evil guys are able to, like, board the Protector, overcome their shields, get aboard, and like take everybody hostage essentially. And the crew splits into a couple groups to deal with this threat. Rickman goes off with Quellic, his fanboy, to like restore the oxygen to the Thermians because they've like been drained of whatever gas they need to breathe in the crew quarters. And so they have to go fix that. And Rickman has to kind of learn to earnestly embrace his role, not be blasé, not be angry and irritated all the time. See what the inner strength of his character can mean.
He gets some funny and like almost kind of touching acting when he like realizes that yes, there is acting power when in getting to deliver his lines at a crucial moment. And just like this self-discovery, in this way, it's like kind of turning on its head the spoof of fan culture, because now it's like, oh wait, maybe there is something real to what's going on here.
Right. And meanwhile, Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver are going through the bowels of the ship. They're like trying to reboot the systems. Actually, what it is Sarah sets it to self-destruct, and they need to deactivate the self-destruct sequence. But what they figure out is that they are actually not comprehensively, like autistically aware of how the spaceship is laid out. And what they need to do, they realize, is call the fans. And so at the convention, Tim Allen bumped into Justin Long, and they accidentally exchanged tricorders, those little space cell phone things. And so Tim Allen realizes that he can talk into one of the like telephones on the ship and make contact with Justin Long down on the ground, who again is like a 15-year-old or something, a teenager. And he's like, I think the character is named Brandon. Brandon? I know I told you off at the convention that Star Trek isn't real, but it is real. And we really need your help right now. Our lives depend on you.
He's like, I knew it!
I really like how this is structured, because then the next thing is Brandon is going through like his database of what he knows about Star Trek, Galaxy Quest, excuse me. And he's got like partial charts of the ship but then he's got to loop in like his whole community of his friends because they've all got like different decks of the ship in like Quake map form. And then they're talking on the space phone to Tim Allen, guiding him through the bowels. And while they're taking this journey, Taggart and Tawny, Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver are kind of acknowledging that ever since they've done the show, they've had kind of this mutual crush. But she's been put off this whole time by his arrogance, that he's so wrapped up in himself that has so far kept them apart.
This felt a little half-assed to me. It was like, you got to have a romantic subplot in there. But, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't come to a whole lot, other than just to emphasize that the Taggart character is kind of a dick to everybody else. And it's ultimately at his own detriment.
Right, and I think that's okay. Like, I think that's what a romantic subplot should be. It should like further accentuate the themes of a story in a tentpole type of thing like this.
Yeah, and there's just so much going on. There's like a bunch of subplots.
Yeah, a lot of good setup and payoff and like ideas followed through.
So they're ultimately able to stop the self-destruct, and they think they're doing all right, but Saris like sneaks onto the bridge in disguise and starts shooting people. And the final twist is that Tim Allen has to activate something called the Omega-13 device, which was a secret weapon of some kind that got activated in the final episode of Galaxy Quest. And so this is basically Woody's finest hour from Toy Story 2, where the final episode was a cliffhanger, and actually we never got to know how the show resolved. So it's kind of this ongoing discussion among the fandom of what does the Omega-13 actually do? Somehow Justin Long knows. Justin Long knows what it does. He's like, well, we speculate that it's a time machine that will send you 13 seconds back in time. And it turns out, yeah, he's right.
It's pretty funny how, like, the aliens and the nerds are pretty much the same. Like, they both have exact understanding and a knowledge of what's going on in the sci-fi world.
Right. And so Tim Allen hits this button and warps back 13 seconds and is able to, like, hog-tie Saris, keep him from killing people. Then the spaceship gets to go home. Couple other things, I guess. During the confrontation with Saris's guys, Quellic, the Thermian, got shot. And so, yeah, Alan Rickman gets that heart-wrenching moment where he gets to say, "You will be avenged." And it's like, it makes you feel something.
Yeah, it's good.
It's like he matters to people. Even though after they manage to restore the oxygen and come back in among the Thermian quarters, they're like, he saved us! Captain Taggart saved us! And so even then, in his moment of triumph, he's in Tim Allen's shadow.
Getting the Tommy treatment, like from Power Rangers.
Because he has long hair. That's what you said. One of the things you said about Tommy. He's cool and has long hair, and so he gets to be the leader. And we do see that, like, in the original broadcast of Galaxy Quest, the commander has, like, a mullet. You know, it's that kind of thing where you have to show, how do you represent that characters were younger? Like, because they weren't really younger. It's like, we need Tim Allen in some scenes to be 18 years younger. Well, we'll give him a mullet.
Right. It's got to look old-fashioned. Actually, when they show, I'm just to jump around here, thinking back on the in the beginning when they show like a clip of the show, and it's got the fake intro screen or the fake credits, and it's not the only time that we see that, I don't think. Actually, do we even see it at the beginning or do we only see it at the end? I can't remember now. The clip of the show. Anyways, I was thinking a couple times throughout this of too many cooks because you have like the fake credits sequence. It doesn't go quite so silly as that, but they're still kind of like mugging and riffing on cheesy 90s intro sequences.
Right.
Too Many Cooks, 10 years old, by the way.
Oh my god. That's crazy. It's going to be its own vintage thing. People will be making Too Many Cooks riffs. But yeah, we didn't talk about too much that all this time, every action set piece that's happening, Sam Rockwell is always screaming that he's going to die because that's his role. He's the guy who dies.
I really like this. And just like Sam Rockwell, whenever I noticed him, he's always doing something funny. Like next time you watch this, be on Rockwell watch and be like, he's always got some funny expression or like background activity going on.
So the crew and the Thermians bid their farewells. Mathazar is sad to see Commander Tim Allen go. But Tim Allen says, Mathazar, your people have a leader. And they leave the crew in the hands of Mathazar officially. He's the captain of the ship. And I love to see it.
Mm-hmm. It's good. And because after he's been so earnest throughout it, it's like, yes, you deserve this. You're so happy for him.
Yeah, because at one point he was like actually being tortured. And so he's like kind of like messed up at this point. And also we had the tragic moment where Saris finally makes Mathazar understand that the crew has deceived him. That they are actors and not space people. And so that's a very sad, very stressful moment. And we see the heartbreak in Mathazar's eyes. But then the crew actually does manage to save the day. They manage to be those people. And so then when Mathazar comes and meets them on the bridge, earlier they told him that the ship on the show was just a model. There never really was a full-size ship. Tim Allen like holds his hands 6 inches apart and he says, it's only this big, Mathazar. And then when everybody is triumphant, Mathazar comes out like hobbling on a cane, laughing. He says, it was as big as this! Ah ha ha ha! A model! Ah! And the crew gets sent back to Earth in like a sub bridge or something. Like some sub part of the ship splits off and launches down to the Earth. And wouldn't you know it, it crash lands in the middle of yet another Galaxy Quest convention. Just like shears the side of a building off and careens out onto a stage where they are supposed to be making another con appearance.
So I was trying to determine, was this just luck or did they aim it for it?
I don't know. Hard to say.
Like in Toy Story, I'm not aiming for the truck. I'm aiming for the convention.
And everybody is kind of surprised, kind of impressed among the audience. And then Saris, who we didn't really see what happened to him, I guess he like clung to the ship or was just kind of always there as they were coming down. But he steps out of the wreckage and he draws a gun and Taggart blasts him and he vaporizes. And everybody claps and cheers and assumes it's part of the show.
Right. I love it's like a riff on the horror movie. You always have the monster does one last gasp at the end, except now here the fans are like unfazed by it. They're not jump scared by it. They're just cheering it along.
And the final thing is a clip of a new incarnation of the show. I guess this appearance, it's on the upswing. The show is on the upswing. The fan base is growing. And so we get Galaxy Quest: The Adventure Continues, where the cast gets brought back to do more new episodes of the show, and now, like, Guy is part of the cast.
Right. I was like, yeah, Sam Rockwell. I would watch this one.
His character name is Rock Ingersoll.
That's like the type of name that you'd expect Bill Paxton to play.
I was thinking of Boogie Nights. His name is Chest Rockwell. Also, Tony Shalhoub has his alien girlfriend.
Well, hold on, Brian. I'm looking at this now. The credits, the cast list. Corbin Bleu, who's from High School Musical, he's in this.
Stop everything! Pump the brakes! Corbin Bleu is in this movie. Yeah, supposedly he plays the young Laredo when he was a kid on the show.
That's wild. Galaxy Quest to High School Musical. It's a talent development pipeline we need.
Corbin Bleu, for those who may not have the instantaneous name recognition, was a DCOM star. He played Chad in the High School Musical franchise, who was Troy's basketball friend. But he also had his starring vehicle in Jump On It, where he was a boy who does competitive, like, double Dutch jump roping.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Galaxy Quest from 1999. This is like, I think last week I said the 25th anniversary. We kind of just came out of the 25th anniversary year. But if anything, 2025 feels more futuristic, more deserving of a time for us to talk about a science fiction film. 2025, Dan.
You know, my wife was talking with me about this. She said, for some reason, 2025 just sounds like a future year. It sounds like a year that you would make up if you were talking about some year in the distant future. It doesn't sound like a real year that you live in. Do you feel that way about 2025?
Oh, absolutely. We're not going to make it to 25 like the song. So I think this is the closest we're going to get. Maybe 2035, 2045, those are going to be very futuristic years. But I'm starting to feel that, yeah. So, Dan, Galaxy Quest. Do we want to say if it's good? Anything else percolating in your brain?
One gag that you sort of alluded to, but I found very funny is, so they replicate these aliens, exactly replicate the ship. And so one aspect of it is, like, apparently in some episode, there's like some engine chamber or something that was designed for TV to be like very dangerous for a set piece.
It's like an obstacle course.
But because they replicated it exactly as it is in the show, now these people who are actors playing their characters have to get through the same thing. And Sigourney Weaver is just like yelling about it so much. And I thought this was pretty inspired.
One interesting thing, I'm glad that you brought that up, that I learned from the behind the scenes. Apparently they originally shot like a raunchier, more explicit version of this movie.
Whoa.
Like, it was originally going to be, I don't know if it ended up being PG and it was originally going to be PG-13. I think that's what it was, is they kind of sanded off the edges to make it PG. But the moment when you can most tell is when they walk into this room with the Crushers, this like weird obstacle chamber that has no reason to be there other than they needed impediment on the ship for one episode. When Sigourney Weaver walks in the original cut, she screams, "Fuck that!" But you can see that it's dubbed over. Her lips are dubbed over. And she says, "Screw that!"
But her mouth is making a "fuh." That's not the way. That doesn't look like she's saying "screw."
Right. And supposedly there were some other scenes of dialogue that were, a little more pushing the envelope, a little more profanity, which I don't think is needed. I think they made a good decision, but it is kind of funny watching that scene.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how much funnier that would make this.
No, I think it was a wise call.
You think so?
But again, it's like you never... Hindsight's 2020, or maybe it's not. This is a case where you don't see what that other path would have been.
Right.
So you can't really know. But I'm happy with what we get.
Well, I guess I will talk us in. Is It Good is our signature section where we each give the movie a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating, toward a good, which is an 8 out of 8. So I guess I will go first. Is Galaxy Quest from 1999 good? And usually like once a year, I'll have a movie that I really like that you assign, but like for some reason, I just feel like I didn't fully latch on and react enough to like give it anything higher than a high 6. And then like a month later, I'm like, what was I thinking? That's clearly a 7. So like the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T was one. Repo Man was one. Although I might have assigned Repo Man. I can't remember. But that's what Galaxy Quest is going to be for me. Like I don't really have too many criticisms of it. Like I think it's very funny. Maybe 1 or 2 parts don't hold up quite as well. But overall, like it's just a very strong story with like good setup and payoff, good well-defined characters that each have a purpose and go through little arcs, and a lot of really funny jokes, and feels tightly tied in with the sort of fandom culture that dominates a lot of pop culture these days. You know, the MCU, the Disney Plus IP, everything merged together, cinematic universes, you know, that everything has to be these days. TV shows and movies and 50 sequels and spin-offs and all that, which is kind of tied with people getting obsessed with things and wanting every little piece, every little scrap of detail and stuff. This is very much in dialogue with that. And I think it does a really good balancing act of like both making fun of it, but like not completely denigrating it, like still kind of ultimately finding worth in it. But that's all subtext because it's really just kind of a funny story of these actors who get thrown into a real life adventure. And it's just very charming. And so I'm going to give it a strong, very good, bordering on a 7. I think it's a terrifically fun blockbuster. And I don't know, it just works really well. And it's kind of distinct. I can't really think of too much like it as far as the sci-fi comedy goes, which to me is a dangerous path to go down. I feel like there aren't too many sci-fi comedies that I get really excited about, but this one I think really works. So I'm going to give this a strong 6 out of 8.
Nice. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I really like this one. It is a pretty tight script. Not totally. The one place that it may meander a little bit is they had to kind of shoehorn in this away mission. But it's in the spirit of having all the essential Trek-isms. And I think this movie does an excellent job of being a parody of Star Trek, but not requiring you to have a comprehensive Trek knowledge to appreciate it. To, like, get it and laugh at it and enjoy it. Because so much of the humor is just the idiosyncrasy of actors having to do it for real. Like, any genre that could be funny. We saw it with, like, generic action war movies in Tropic Thunder, which I also like. I think the cast is really strong, and everybody gets something to do, and they generally do it well. I can watch this one again and again and always laugh. And you're right, you don't see too many that are quite like this. It feels kind of unique. The director, whose name we haven't said, is Dean Parisot. Maybe Parisot. And he hasn't done much else as far as movies. I guess he went to film school and he won the Student Academy Award. He made this movie. He made Bill and Ted 3. there's a couple other odds and ends, but he's got like 5 movies that he's credited directing. He's continued on as a television director.
Oh, interesting.
So he does episodes of TV shows.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought of Babe, the pig movie. Because that was made, I mean, George Miller made it as producer, but the director is this guy named Chris Noonan, who has done almost nothing else. He's made like 1 or 2 other movies. And it's like somebody makes this really successful, almost like sui generis success.
Sui generis. Because it's a pig movie.
And then kind of disappears. So, yeah, that is kind of interesting.
Dean Parasot, come on the pod.
We're here for you. We'll listen to you talk all day.
I didn't give it a number, though. I think it's going to squeak just into an 8 for me. Maybe that's not too much of a surprise. I am going to give it the masterpiece rating.
Toward a good.
Not among my strongest 8s, perhaps, but I really like this one, and I definitely recommend it.
That's awesome.
Grab the VHS if you're at a gas station and you see it. Well, I'm glad that we finally got around to watching that one in this futuristic year of 2025. Dan, what will we be watching next? What's on your heart, as Delilah says on the late night radio?
I love Delilah, by the way. I have positive feelings towards Delilah. I know she's corny, but she just wants to make people feel good. So there's a movie that I've been wanting to pick for the pod at some point. Like, honestly, dating back to around the start, this was like when I kind of made it an expanded list. This was one of the ones that I wanted to talk about at some point. And in some ways, it's a little bit analogous to this in that it's a parody of sorts, but also kind of its own unique thing. And it simultaneously makes fun of, but also appreciates the thing that it's parodying. And I just think it tends to be pretty successful and unique. And that is Enchanted, the 2007 Disney spoof. I think it's 07. So, Brian, we'll be watching and discussing Enchanted starring Amy Adams. You've seen this one, right?
I have. It's been a long time. I watched it back when it came out, like my senior year of high school, and I did enjoy it. And what did you say earlier? You smelled what I was stepping in? Well, right back at you. I can understand how your brain got to this movie from this, where it's this, like, both a loving homage and like a smirking parody of a long tradition of a certain genre of film.
Exactly. And I think has a strong cast and is just really funny. So I don't want to spoil all my talking points. We'll get there. But yeah. Next week, Brian, Enchanted. And if you want to do extra credit, I'm not going to really do a recap of it or anything. But last year or 2 years ago, a sequel came out. It was going to be a theatrical release. They ended up dumping it to Disney Plus. It's called Disenchanted.
Okay. Well, I've not seen that yet. I've heard mixed things. I'm definitely curious. So, good excuse for me to watch that finally.
Okay.
Well, it's been fun as always, Dan.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we can find our groove in this new year. And talk to you soon.
What is Alan Rickman's thing?
By Grabthar's hammer, by the sons of Warvan, you shall be avenged.
On that note, I'll see you later, Brian, and talk to you next week, listeners.
Bye.